can painting miniatures be considered a form of art, or is it just more along the lines of a creative outlet or a form of a craft? I'm not quite sure. I think perhaps the answer might be that it depends. And the reason that I started thinking about this is that if you've been following this channel for any length of time, you probably know that I, from time to time, deal with a lot of mental health issues. And as a part of sort of using that in a personal journey of recovery, I have joined a group called One of Us, which is working to destigmatize mental health issues. And the main part of the work this group does on a volunteer basis is to go out and do talks and be a part of local community efforts to destigmatize mental health issues and just be open about it and let people know that they are welcome to ask questions, and also very importantly that they are not alone. And so for week 41, where we have sort of a mental health awareness week, the local library asked if we wanted to do a collaboration where we could sort of exhibit some of our artworks and also talk about how being creative helps with mental health issues. And so I thought that was a really good idea. And so I wrote to the person who is responsible for this project, and I told her, you know what, I would love to be a part of this, and I would like to bring my painted models for this exhibition. And as soon as I had hit enter on the email, I thought that was perhaps very presumptuous of me. I mean, it's supposed to be for pieces of art, and I just volunteered my painted toy soldiers. Could I even do that? And had I now put her in like a bad position where she would have to get back to me and say, you know what, thank you so much for offering, but that is definitely not what we are looking for. We're looking for like paintings, sculptures, poems, stuff like that, and not for toys. So luckily she didn't. She just said, that sounds great, and I'm going to then do the exhibition in a couple of weeks. So that's fine. But I am still kind of curious whether or not we can actually consider painting miniatures a form of art. It's definitely a creative outlet for a lot of people. And I would also say that it can be a craft with a very high skill level for some people. Some people are, as you all of course know, are just amazing at what they do. But that's not the same, in my mind at least, as being an artist. That you're skilled at something, that does not necessarily mean that what you are making is art. For instance, if I write an article for a newspaper or something, I don't think that's art. I mean, I do it pretty well because I've been, trained to do so, and I know how to write, but I don't think it's art. It's just an article. It's just something I do. Whereas if I write a poem, I consider that to be at least closer to art, if not just art in and of itself. Whether or not it's good or not, I don't think your level of skill has much to do with whether or not it can be considered art. I think, it can be more or less interesting. It can be more or less relevant. I mean, the painting from a 5-year-old is probably only relevant to his or her parents, whereas a painting like the Mona Lisa is, of course, relevant to, millions of people all over the world still. So, of course, the art can be more or less relevant depending on what kind of art it is, how skilled the artist is, and what you want to express with the piece of art, and so on. But still, a painted toy soldier, can that be a piece of art? And for a long time, I have just thought to myself that it couldn't, that it was just, it's just painted toys. But then after I, as I said, volunteered my own models for an art exhibition, I thought, well, actually, why not? Because artistic expression to me has something to do with, of course, expressing something, like expressing your emotions, your thoughts, the way you view the world. And I think I can't really, well, perhaps you could, but I certainly can't paint a model that encapsulates the way I view the world. I can't even imagine what a model would look like painted with something like that, whereas I could much more easily imagine that you could write like a collection of poems or a collection of paintings or something like that that would be able to do that, whereas painting a model, I don't really think you could do that. Perhaps you could, and if you know someone who can, please let me know, because I would love to see that, because that would be so cool. On the other hand, I think when I paint my models, I don't just, randomly put paint on them, even though I know looking for, if you look through my painting catalog, you would definitely be well within your rights to think that I just randomly choose some colors and put them on, and I have no thoughts as to whether or not they would work together. But I actually usually put quite a lot of thought into my my models and the colors I choose, and the sort of the saturation and what colors I put next to each other, and how I want to highlight them, and how I want the shadows to work. And usually it's just because I want it to look as bright and as silly as possible. But who says that art can't be silly, right? So perhaps I think I have, well, I don't think I have reached a conclusion. That sounds like very dramatic. But perhaps I have at least reached the understanding for myself as regards to miniature painting, that I think it could be considered more along the lines of perhaps abstract art. When you are just painting a model and you are experimenting with colors, and you are trying to push the limits of what kind of colors you can use and how to apply them next to each other and how they interact. I think that is something that you can also definitely find in abstract art, and so why not on a model, right? I also think that if you are a person who come up with your own, let's say, Space Marine chapter for Warhammer 40k, and you paint them in a specific way, and you write a whole backstory, you're also being very creative. You're creating something that hasn't existed before, and you are telling a story. And I mean, that is one of the oldest forms of art in human history, right? And so I think that can also be a form of artistic expression. On the other hand, I have like a big orc army for 40k, and I don't consider it a piece of art when I paint Ork Boy number 71, because I have painted 70 Ork Boys more or less exactly like that one before, and to me it has nothing to do with art. I'm not invested in it. Like, yeah, I'm invested in it because I want to have a painted gaming piece to put on the tabletop, but I'm not investing anything specifically emotionally, or putting a lot of thought into it, or anything along those lines. It's just something that I do, and so I think of that more along the lines of a craft. I mean, certainly it takes a little bit of skill to know, what kind of paint you want to use, and the consistency of the paints, and how to work with the brush and so on. But it's not artistic at all. I'm not trying to express myself. I'm not trying to come up with something new. I'm not even being very creative. I'm just applying a skill that I have learned along the way of being in this hobby. And so that's not artistic to me. But when you're trying something new, when you are pushing the limits, when you are experimenting, when you are trying to tell a story, I mean, can't that be considered art? I'm not sure. Again, as I said, art can have a lot of skill levels, and it can be relevant to more or less people. And I think perhaps it would be difficult to imagine that painting wargaming miniatures could ever be considered an art form that was, hugely relevant to most, a whole bunch of other people who are not invested in this hobby. But does it necessarily have to be relevant to every single other person out there, or is it enough if it's just relevant for the people in this very tiny niche hobby? Perhaps, I mean, it's okay that it's just something that we can do, and something that we can enjoy, and something that we can share with each other. And perhaps when we are expressing something, when we're being emotionally invested, when we are trying to push the limits, perhaps that can actually be considered something along the lines of art. I think so. I'm not quite sure. So yeah, what do you think? I would be really interested in knowing whether or not you thought that painting miniatures is sort of just a craft, or if it is actually an art form in and of itself, or if you would perhaps liken it to other forms of artistic expression. I would really love to know. So please let me know in the comment section below what you think of this topic, and whether or not you also can show me, like, if you have links or anything to specific pieces of art that you would like to show me. I would love that as well. So yeah, is miniature painting an art? I think it can be. I think so. What do you think? Thanks for watching.